Welcome back, everybody. If you're like me, you like getting a good deal on camera gear. Well, I've been on a bit of a shopping spree lately. I've picked up 2 camera bodies and 2 lenses for different applications in the last 30 days. And I'm going to talk about 3 of the 4 today. The last one I just picked up yesterday. I haven't had a chance to put it through its paces yet. It's a new mount for me, so I'm looking forward to showing you that in the future, and it's still a current camera. But I'm going to cover the other 3 today. I'm going to show you what they can do, why I bought them, and how I got the deals that I got, and some of them are pretty great. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get started. I'm going to run through these from the least impressive to the most impressive deals that I got. The worst of the deals was pretty good, and the best of the deals was really great, so I will show you all of that. The lens that we're going to start out with is this. We'll see how well the autofocus does. This is the Canon 17-40 L series lens. It's a full-frame wide angle from Canon. It's older, but I was looking for a wide-angle DSLR lens that worked not only on my full-frame cameras when they're adapted, but also on my smaller sensor cameras, in particular the cameras that I've had modified to see infrared light. Modern lenses, on average, don't do very good with infrared modified cameras. This lens has a reputation for working really well with infrared light, and that has been my experience. I'm near the end of a full-year documentary project where we're doing a time-lapse once a week for 52 weeks on a nature preserve, and I've been shooting a lot of infrared, and there's a couple of shots that I wanted to get that were a little tighter than the 10-18 Canon EFS lens that I've been using, so this was going to be a good fit. I've adapted this lens to Micro Four Thirds, to Canon RF, and very soon will be Sony E, which is the new camera that I just recently got. And these are still on sale new. This is a camera from the early 2000s, but you can still buy these new for about $5.99. I'm not sure I do that. I think that's a little high for something of that vintage. And it's a lot cheaper than the current f4 wide angle available for the RF mount, which is, I believe, check my notes here, it's the 14-35 and it's running about $1,200. I picked mine up for 249 bucks. So an L series lens, it's relatively sharp, plays super well with infrared, and I'm super happy with what I've been getting out of it, including this picture from the preserve that I've been doing the work on. It's a tallgrass prairie preserve, and I think this shot looks really impressive. This shot has been post-processed. It comes out of the camera kind of flat and pink, so we add a lot of contrast and convert it to black and white to get this kind of look. I'm going to talk about how I get good deals after I've walked through all 3 pieces, so that's coming up. So this next deal was a lot cheaper than anything that I saw online, including some of the big dealers that specialize in used equipment. Time lapses go through batteries, the weather isn't always ideal, and I wanted a camera with a little longer battery life than my current set of cameras. My EM5s, I've got a Mark III and a Mark II, both get about 1,500 shots on a battery, which is a lot higher than the CEPA rating, and that's pretty good. I ran this camera, which I'll talk about here in just a second, for 1,500 shots, and it only gone through 10% of its battery. So pretty amazing battery life. This is a very used EM1 Mark III from Olympus. The official name is the OM-D E-M1 Mark III. A little bit of a tongue twister, but I've always loved these cameras, and I never had a chance to own one. And this one does have some brassing around the edges. It looks well used, but strangely, it only had about 27,000 shutter actuations. So it looks like it got carried a lot more than it actually got used. Maybe this person was really good at getting the shot the first time, but for a flagship camera, that's pretty low. And while there are newer ones on the market, this is not a current camera. OM Systems bought Olympus, and they came out with the replacement for this, which was the OM1. And there wasn't a ton of difference, but a little. And then they more recently came out with the OM1 Mark II. Again, it's not night and day, but they did add some computational features and some other stuff. But it's the same resolution. And for my time-lapse work, I need about 8 megapixels of data. This is 20. So this camera does fine. It is super weather resistant. I've seen these washed with a hose, which I would not recommend doing, and I will never do myself. But it's that kind of weather resistance that they have. Of course, it depends on the lens as well. The newest versions of that camera cost about $2,000 online. When I was looking around preparing the script, I saw some at some of the big used online dealers for a little over $800 and up from there. I got mine for $499 and it included a second battery. So really great deal. It's been a ton of fun to shoot. It's wicked fast compared to anything else in my inventory. So I really enjoy having it. I took it out for a nature walk the other day with the really inexpensive 75-300 lens from Olympus. I believe mine's the Mark II, and Panasonic has a similar one. And they are not the sharpest or fastest lenses out there, but they're good enough for most purposes. And I was able to capture this image, and really I'm quite happy with it. And the final bit of gear that I picked up recently is this. It is the Canon. I have the tripod mount upside down because I was hand holding it last. It is the Canon 300 f4 IS. This is a lens from the late 90s. It is very far from new, but it had a reputation for being extremely sharp when it was released. That has been my experience so far. It is not as sharp as the sharpest of modern glass, but it is good enough, and it plays well with infrared, which is pretty rare for telephotos. So I've been super happy with it. I needed a lens that was a good mid-range telephoto for some wildlife work. And I've got APS-C and Micro Four Thirds bodies that will adapt to this. On a Micro Four Thirds body, if it's not a focal reducer, this is a 600 millimeter f4, which is awesome. On an APS-C body, this is about a 450 millimeter lens, still f4 aperture. And I've got a focal reducer, a 0.71 focal reducer for my Micro Four Thirds kit, which takes this and brings it up to a 423 millimeter equivalent, but also gives it an extra stop of light, so an f2.8, which makes it really good in low light. It's kind of hilarious. Obviously, if you spend the big bucks on the giant new modern lenses, you're going to get a super sharp lens with really great build quality. This does not have the best weather sealing nor stabilization in the world. It does provide 2 stops of stabilization, but it's not anywhere close to what the modern lenses do. But from a steady platform, these are really good. And that 400 millimeter 2.8 from Canon, the modern RF one, I believe it runs around $12,000. So this is a lot cheaper and much more in my budget. And I was able to pick this up for 350 bucks. So really, really inexpensive. The optics are clean. The body is clean. It looks really, let's see if you can see that. It looks great. It's got a kind of clever built-in hood, which is kind of fun. Obviously, it's got a tripod collar, which is useful if you're mounting it to a tripod. You don't want to mount the camera because it puts a lot of torque on the mount. So this does a really good job for that. I've used this quite extensively. I shot this with my Canon R50 that's been modified for infrared and was able to capture an adult bald eagle with 2 of its children. And pretty neat shot. There's a little glow to infrared images, and this certainly has it. It doesn't have that tack sharp that a modern lens and color would give you, but I think it's sharp enough. I did do denoising and post-processing on this to get it super clean. So I took it out with my EM1 Mark III and the focal reducer that I mentioned, the 0.71, I believe it's a Viltrox focal reducer. And we shot some bullfrogs as the sun was setting. It was super dark. Both of these have noise reduction, I believe. Certainly the second one does, because the sun was just about set and the frog had been in the shadow of a tree in the water. So f2.8 was super useful. This was handheld, so the stabilization really helped, and the stabilization in the body was awesome as well. This camera has a really good, I believe it's 6 stops of shake reduction in body. So the combination, I don't have another piece of equipment that'll give me that clean of an image. So I was super impressed. So it's worked really well for me. How do I get great deals on this kind of gear? The first thing I do is kind of analyze what I need. In this case, I knew I needed a moderate telephoto that was pretty good in low light. Knew I probably couldn't afford a 2.8, but f4 was probably good enough. Because I'm adapting it, it could have been a Nikon, maybe even an old Sony, although I'm not as familiar with their glass. Canon certainly works. I've owned Canon before and have a pretty good collection of their glass now. I knew I needed a wide angle on a full frame that would still work on smaller sensored cameras that also played good with infrared. This lens is probably my leading contender for that. There is a 16-35 f4 that is supposed to play well with infrared, but I knew this one did for sure. I saw another photographer use it before. So I knew that was on my list. Then finally, I needed a camera that had good battery life and weather sealing for time lapses, and it had to be a Micro Four Thirds camera. I could have probably used any of the GH series from Panasonic. That would have worked well, but I got a good deal on this. The local dealer doesn't carry a whole lot of Panasonic anymore, so it's much more likely for me to run into Olympus, and I own quite a few of those, so that worked well for me. Then I go through and I look at what they're trading for online, and specifically from the big used dealers online. I'm not going to mention their names, but they're really easy to find. They all offer warranties and They have a reputation for being very easy to work with. Looked to see what they were selling, what price range I could get it from an online dealer. And then I kind of made a decision about what that solution was worth for me. Kept all of that information on my phone. And then I drop into my local store, and I'm super lucky. I live in a fairly small market, but I still have both a local camera store that sells new and used gear, and we have a repair shop that also sells used gear. So I have a couple of options local to me. So I go in there every once in a while when I need something, and I take a look at what they've got. Retailers want to move gear. That's what they're in business to do. So if they have things that they don't think they're going to sell, or they're going to have trouble selling, or things that they've had for quite a while, often they're willing to deal. It's not unusual for them to have a little bit of wiggle room. So I'm always willing to make an offer. If I see something that is a solution for one of the things that I need, this was the first of the things that I bought, I walked in and they actually had two of them. So I made them an offer. It's not a new lens. It's probably not something that's on a lot of people's radar. So I thought, hey, maybe I can get a good deal. They made me a great deal, and I had my pick of two. This camera is 2 cameras out of date. Also not a lot of demand. Micro Four Thirds isn't as popular as it once was. I still love it, and a lot of people do, but it doesn't have the market share that it once did. And I used to work for this dealer, and when I left, I was a big Micro Four Thirds fan, so they sold more just because I was excited about it. Now that I've left, they don't sell nearly as much. And they'd had it for a little while, and I made them a deal. And obviously, I don't know how cleanly you can see this, but the paint's worn off in quite a few places. This is not a pristine camera. So I made them an offer, and they came down a little bit. Got a great deal. I don't think this lens is on many people's radar unless you're looking for a really good deal. It's just an old lens. When I talked to the dealer, I'd seen it in the cabinet a few times, and I was like, how long have you had that? Turns out they'd had it for years. So they were excited to move it, and I got it for, I think that was a little less than half off. After I made an offer, they made a counter offer, and I picked it up. And in my experience, you do a lot better with going to a dealer. Most of them will have a guarantee. In this case, this dealer has a 30-day guarantee. So if you get it home, they inspect everything. But if you get it home and something doesn't work that they missed, or somebody managed to get something to work in the short term, but it doesn't work while you're using it, you have 30 days to get it fixed or replaced. That's a good thing to have. You hear horror stories of people having bad experiences, particularly online. So I'm a big fan of walking into a place, getting my hands on it, and being able to play with the gear before I purchase it. One person's excellent condition is another person's very well used condition. So grading can be variable, and if you get to see it, you get to make your own decision. Another way a lot of people get great deals, and I was just talking to a guy the other day when I was out on a walk that had this exact thing happen. He's got a friend that's a professional photographer who had switched brands. I had an older camera still laying around. Still a great camera. It was I believe it was the 5 series from Canon, probably the Mark II, 5D Mark II, and a 70-200 lens, first gen. Those cameras were great. A lot of news reporters, a lot of wedding photographers shot that gear back in the day. Is it as good as a modern camera? No, it's not. Is it good enough for Instagram or Facebook or moderate-sized prints? Absolutely it is, especially if you know what you're doing. And he was able to get it almost free. If you don't know any professional photographers or people who have nicer gear than you do, look for local camera clubs. Sometimes they can be really nice to deal with. Look at any kind of local photography groups on Facebook or Instagram or any of the social media stuff. It's a great way to meet people. It's a great way to network. And lots of times people have gear that they're not using. If you let people know what you're looking for, sometimes people will go, oh, hey, I've got one of those. I can make you a deal. Not always. I've been looking for a long telephoto for a while and just kind of missed this one in the dealer's case. So sometimes you have to be patient, but sometimes somebody's just going to have something and they like you and are willing to give you a good deal. If I haven't said it already, there's a philosophy that I've kept for a long time, which is if it was a great lens 5 or 10 years ago, it's probably still a very good lens. Maybe not as great. If you need bleeding edge gear, maybe you need something that's a little bit better, but most of us can get by with pretty darn good. And that's where you can get some deals sometimes. And my last thought on buying used gear, I steer clear of the big auction sites and the online marketplaces. I know people that have gotten great deals. There's a lot of people out there that I think are optimistic about what they can sell their gear for, but some people sell it for a really reasonable amount. But you don't know how honest the person on the other side is. When you're dealing from a big dealer, they've got their reputation on the line. They often have warranties built into their pricing and delivery, and they want to do a good job for you. Most people are honest online, but that's not always the case. I know some people that have gotten burned pretty bad doing online auctions or online marketplace kind of things. So if that is an attractive way to go for you, sometimes there's some great deals out there, but buyer beware, be very careful. Not everything is as good as it seems, and if the deal seems too good to be true, it probably is. I hope you found this video useful. Again, please like and subscribe. The channel is growing, and I'm enjoying making these for you. If you've gotten a great deal, please share it in the comment section below, as well as if you have a question, please leave that down there as well. I try to get back to questions promptly. Good luck on your art journey. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.